Salman, along with other world leaders celebrating Syria's national occasion. Syrian Emergency Minister Raed al-Saleh and UNFPA representatives Ensra Ahmed has held talks on boosting cooperation in emergency response, including updating Syria's national risk assessment matrix. Both sides have stressed stronger coordination, greater women's participation in response teams. Arab and Muslim governments have rejected Tony Blair's inclusion on Donald Trump's proposed Board of Peace for Gaza, leading to Blair being dropped from consideration. Hamas officials Hussam Badrein has urged mediators to increase pressure on Israel, saying the ceasefire cannot advance amid at least 38 reported violations by Israel since October, as Gaza's health ministry says 377 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli fire since the truce began, underscoring the depth of the ongoing crisis. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he will send the United States an updated plan for Ukraine. He says that he wants to discuss Ukraine's restoration as part of the peace plan preparations. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that the country could hold elections within 60 to 90 days if the US and Europe provide security guarantees. He adds that Kyiv would move to change the law once those guarantees are secured. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has spoken with Ukraine's Prime Minister discussing expanding the country's ability to purchase American LNG. He has also highlighted U.S. President Donald Trump's commitment to lasting peace in Ukraine. Now for this hour, we start with Israel and Gaza. The United Nations warns that thousands of children in Gaza continues to suffer from severe malnutrition despite the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas that began in October. UNICEF, which is the main provider of malnutrition treatment in the region, has reported that 9,300 children were treated for acute malnutrition last month. While this is an improvement from over 14,000 cases in August, the figure remains 5 times higher than during the February-March ceasefire. UNICEF spokesperson Tess Ingram has described meeting underweight babies struggling to survive, emphasizing that aid flows remain insufficient. Although more supplies are entering Gaza, obstacles such as water delays, road closures, and security issues continue to limit the access. Essential items still remain expensive for most families, driving malnutrition rates. Humanitarian agencies are calling for all crossings into Gaza to remain open to ensure adequate food and medical support, warning that prolonged malnutrition could cause lasting damage to the region's children. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Alon Pincus. He's a former Israeli ambassador, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, what more is happening among Gazans about their malnutrition that UN has issued the warning about, and what are the challenges leading to this, that they're unable to access food? What's happening with Israel? What's happening with Hamas? Ambassador, you might be muted here. If you can please unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. Is this better?
Thank you very much. Yes, it's perfect. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, it's my mistake.
Thank you.
I was saying, Asuma, that you were answering your own question, and I agree with you. No. That's good. That I agree with you. Look, yes, there is a ceasefire. However, humanitarian aid is not getting in the quantities that are required. There is a severe shortage of potable water. And as for the malnutrition, this needs to be dealt with medically. And there are almost no functioning hospitals or clinics in Gaza. There is a manpower shortage of doctors, nurses, medical workers, paramedics, and what have you. And the entire Gaza Strip is essentially in ruins and rubble, so there's no way getting from one place to another. And if your children, your sister's children, if your neighbor's children are suffering from malnutrition, you don't even know where to go. There's no one to direct you. There's no phone system, emergency phone system. I mean, yeah, there is, but it's barely functioning. And so, unless you asked about what can be done, unless there is a huge, significant infusion of humanitarian aid and medical personnel into Gaza, which I'm not seeing, we will continue, unfortunately and tragically, to see these reports.
And Ambassador, we know that there's a lot of trust issues between these UN-run aid agencies and Israel, as well as even on Hamas and other agents who are to be distributing aid to these people. Is there any aid organization or agency that can be trusted to distribute aid to these people?
Tragically, no. I mean, yeah, you have the UN, which everyone should trust, but yet Israel does not trust. You had the UNRWA, the United Nations Refugee Relief. They're not working, UNRWA. Then you have, all those sorts of Gaza Foundation operations that existed in the last 6 months. They basically closed shop and they no longer operate. So what is needed and is not happening is some kind of a provisional government in Gaza. Gaza right now is not governed. It is ruled by brute force by the remains of what remained of Hamas. But they're not providing, they are not dispensing basic and fundamental government services such as medical aid and nutrition and food centers and places where people could come and be fed. And unless there is a group that is willing to do this, and there won't be a group like this until what is called the ISF, the International Stabilization Force, which is that body, that amorphous body that was agreed on during the ceasefire, but has yet to be established. Unless they start governing Gaza and opening up for these kind of humanitarian aid and medical aid operations, again, we're going to tragically see these reports piling up.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic. Now, viewers, we stay in the region. Reporters Without Borders, an NGO, has said that Israel has killed more journalists in 2025 than any other country in the world. According to an annual report published by the RSF, Israeli forces, which carried out the war in Gaza, was responsible for the deaths of 29 Palestinian reporters. It was the third consecutive year running that Israel was named the top in the list by the NGO. Mexico is the second most dangerous country in the world for journalists, with 9 killed in the past year. According to the report, war-ravaged Ukraine, where 3 journalists were killed in 2025, and Sudan, where 4 journalists were killed this year, are other highly dangerous countries for journalists. Now, for this discussion, we welcome back former ambassador Elon Pinkas. He's former ambassador, Israeli ambassador, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, how long do you think it would take for Israel to Israel to allow other, journalists, foreign journalists, to enter Gaza?
Right. Well, that's a very good question. I'm sure that many international news outlets like you or like others from all over the world would like to go into Gaza and report what they're seeing and what's going on in Gaza. The thing is, right now, and I go back to our previous conversation, Asuma, the thing is that Gaza is now, politically, it's a no man's land. Israel sort of withdrew, but not entirely. Hamas is sort of destroyed, but not really. There's no functioning government to manage these kind of journalists' incursions into Gaza, and there's no political authority that would welcome them, that would escort them. Now, you may say that you're willing to go to Gaza without such an escort, but then you're in a war zone, and Israel won't allow this to happen for obvious reasons. Look, I don't know when Israel will allow journalists to come in, but I can imagine that if and when there is that international stabilization force that we spoke about a moment ago, if that is established, even if it's not 100% complete and not 100% functioning, then you will see, the permits for journalists or for news organizations to go in. Right now, but there's also a political angle to this. We have to admit, right now, Israel has no interest in allowing journalists into Gaza, because what they will report is undoubtedly and unequivocally going to be uncomplimentary, to put it mildly, to Israel.
And like as you rightfully mentioned in our previous discussion, Ambassador, you also mentioned that right now Gaza doesn't have any political figure that
Right.
is legitimate. So how, as news organization, what reports are we to take seriously when all we have is to only take and report the reports of the casualties reported by Hamas-run Health Ministry of Gaza about the death, and so what are we to trust here, and how significant or how urgent this issue should be for Israel to allow their other reporters, such as our organization you mentioned, and other many organizations who want to get in there, who want to report what is actually happening, and not just take the reports coming directly out of Hamas-run health organization.
Well, you're right. You raise an excellent point, Asuma, because if indeed Israel is right, and the Palestinian health authorities, the Hamas health ministry, manipulated data and came out with exaggerated numbers, then Israel should have a vested interest in allowing the international media or the UN or any kind of human rights organizations into Gaza to prove the point. Yet Israel is not allowing it, perhaps because it knows that while numbers we're manipulating, the numbers are pretty much real. Israel is saying, oh, it's not true that over 70,000 were killed in Gaza. Well, prove, if you can, prove that there have been less, and prove that many of them, or most of them, were indeed combatants. I think Israel is going to find it extraordinarily difficult to prove that. Now, there have been other estimates of the number of casualties done through a statistical model that takes a neighborhood. You take an aerial photo, a drone photo of a neighborhood. You know how many buildings are there. You know how many people live there. You know how many people fled. So you do the math, because if you had 100% people living there and 60% left, that means that 40% were probably killed. 40% out of that number, you add that and throughout Gaza, and you reach a number that is not far from 70,000. Now, I'm not saying that this statistical model is absolutely accurate. Obviously not. It does not, it does not see actual bodies of people who have been tragically killed or killed during the war. But it's the closest approximation that we have. And so back to your question, until and when international media and international organizations go into Gaza, the numbers that we have are the numbers that we have.
Right. Yes, unfortunately. But
Yes.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we stay in the region now. Now, moving on, Israel and Bolivia have formally renewed diplomatic relations by ending more than a decade of estrangement with the signing of a joint declaration in Washington. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar and his Bolivian counterpart, Fernando Ramallo, signed the agreement during a ceremony which was also attended by Bolivia's Minister of Finance and Economy, José Gabriel Espinosa. Bolivia's left-wing government of Evo Morales broke diplomatic ties with Israel in 2009 during a 3-week war in response to Hamas's rocket attacks, with relations being restored in 2019. although Morales later cut ties again shortly after the Israel-Hamas war began in 2023. Now again, the new center-right government of President Rodrigo Paz, who took office in November, seeks warmer ties with Israel and the U.S. by renewing it. Now for this discussion, we welcome back former Israeli Ambassador Elon Pinkas from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, how long do you think this peace kind of situation between Bolivia and Israel could last? We can only speculate here. And also, can you tell us a little bit briefly about the history behind Bolivia and Israel's on and off situation?
Yeah, I don't want to go into too much history and details, not to bore our viewers. Look, Israel traditionally had very good relations with many countries in South America, in Latin America, Central America and South America, but I'm focusing on South America. But, as all kinds of leftist revolutionary regimes came to power in Bolivia and in Venezuela, and in other places, in Paraguay at some point, in Chile at some point, then relations soured, and they had this, the non-aligned, which India was a part of at the time, the non-aligned movement, and they all thought they were fighting an anti-colonial war, and Israel is a result of colonial occupation, and so on and so forth. Now, good relations were always maintained with countries like Argentina and Uruguay and Peru and Mexico, that's Central America. But there was always a problem, and Colombia, but there was always a problem with Bolivia, Venezuela, and at some point with Colombia in recent years. Now that there's a ceasefire, one should hope that these these tensions will simmer down. Governments have changed. Governments in South America, not so much in Israel. Look, a country should always strive to have good diplomatic relations with everyone. That goes without saying, and as a former diplomat, would be the first to attest to that. But let's also not exaggerate the importance of the time that we did not have a relationship, full diplomatic relations with Bolivia, and now the agreement to reestablish and renew them. It's in the grand scheme of things, it's important, but it's not a big deal.
Right. And how will this, warming relations between Bolivia and Bolivia's current government stance, how do you think this will be affecting their domestic political dynamics?
I doubt it will have a domestic. I don't know that many people in Bolivia care so much. I mean, everyone is exposed to international media, and everyone has a smartphone, and everyone goes on TikTok or Instagram or news websites or social networks, so people know. I mean, this is not 30, 40 years ago when you read it in the newspaper or you just didn't know what was going on in Sri Lanka or South Korea or Bolivia. Now everyone knows in real time, but I don't know that it's going to have a major effect. Again, it depends on how things develop in the Middle East. I mean, if the ceasefire will break and war resumes, then all hell is going to break loose. Then you and I can have this conversation again, and you will ask, why did Bolivia sever diplomatic relations with Israel again? Of course, I'm speculating, but yeah, you never know. It depends on developments. But again, it's important, but it's not a big deal.
Yes, we will be eyeing that, Ambassador. Thank you so much for joining us today in Newsx World. That was Mr. Elon Pinkas. He was a former Israeli ambassador, joined us live from Tel Aviv. Now we move on to our next news. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned a referral by Yemen's Houthis of some of the dozens of UN staffs they have detained to a special criminal court. UN spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric has said that the Houthis have arbitrarily detained 59 Yemeni UN personnel who have been held for years without any due process in violation of international law. Houthis have controlled most of Yemen, including the capital Sana'a, since seizing power in 2014 and early 2015. Let's in fact listen into what the UN spokesperson has shared.
Gravely concerned about the continued arbitrary detention of 59 of our UN personnel, in addition to dozens of personnel from NGOs, civil society, and diplomatic missions. He condemns the referral by the Houthi de facto authorities of United Nations personnel to their special criminal court. The United Nations personnel have been held incommunicado, some for many years, without any due process, in violations of international law. United Nations personnel, including those who are nationals of Yemen, are immune from legal process in respect to all acts performed by them in their official capacity. We call on the de facto authorities to rescind the referral and work in good faith towards the immediate release of all UN detained personnel of the United Nations, NGOs, and diplomatic community. The United Nations remains committed to supporting the people of Yemen and delivering principled humanitarian assistance. And that statement has been shared with you.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Ms. Shruti Dasgupta. She's an international affairs expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Ms. Shruti, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now looking at this, it seems like it's very overdue and late what UN is finally doing for this their staffs in held for years, some for years in Yemen. So what options does the United Nations have to pressure the Houthis into releasing these 59 detained Yemeni UN personnel?
Greetings, Asuma. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
What I understand is that UN is acting very, very late. I think in mid-September, they finally moved out the UN envoy to Yemen from the Sana'a, which is the US Houthi-controlled region, to the Republic of Yemen-controlled, internationally recognized region, and which new capital has been designated as Aden. So they have just now transferred their envoy. So since the Houthi rebellion and the division of the state within one recognized and one unrecognized groups, they have, since 2015, they did not make these moves. They have consistently moved their staff, asked for relocation of that staff, but it has never shown up in this particular way. They have, if I'm correct, I know that in 2021, Houthi started rounding up the World Food Program people, the UNICEF people as spies of the espionage triangle, calling them a member of the Saudi, Israel, and American spy network. And most of these, if they are international, the UN envoy would unfortunately have to go and plead and beg in a across the table discussion with these warlords and ask for the release of the international ones. They would still let go, but the locals do not have that kind of protection because they still come under the Yemen, the Houthi region of political military control, and they were subjected to the law that the Houthis decided for them. So in 2021, they started rounding people up. In 2021, they rounded up staffers that were working in 2015 also. So during at that time when the Saudi-led air raids were happening on the Yemen side, they accused in 2021 a few staffers of being part of that network and then keeping them under strict control. This was the staffer that the UN Secretary has been talking about, Guterres is talking about, that some of them have been captured for years. So that though some of them were captured in 2021, there has been no communication. We do not know how they're kept, in what state of torture or life or death are they, and what are the crimes that they're actually accused of. There is no proof, there is no resolution of this particular conflict. What I do know is that repeatedly they keep attacking UN staffers, and most of the international ones are let go, the locals are kept back, and now 59 of them have been transferred to the Special Criminal Court. Last time, 17 of them were given a death sentence by a firing squad. So the future of these 59 now hang in balance. No matter what the UN now comes out and says, their actions are a little too late. If in 2021, if the staffers were being targeted. They should have acted and protected their local assets against this kind of betrayal of trust that they are now facing at the hands of the Houthis. So by talking to a terrorist, you cannot find a midway ground. They will only let go of a few. The current ones that have been detained are accused of collaborating with Israel in the August 28 air attacks, which killed a lot of Houthi top officials. So now we're back again. Any attack on a Houthi and a UN employee will take the brunt of it. And the protection is lacking. And until and unless the donors as well as international bodies pressurize UN itself, which is supposed to be an international body, to take people away from conflict zone, they're going to continue to face something like this.
Yes, and thank you for laying it all the recent developments out here for us and our viewers. And lastly, how could this escalation now further affect this ongoing, late indeed, but these diplomatic efforts to negotiate a political settlement in Yemen, between Yemen and also UN? And is there any regional actor that can respond effectively to this?
Maybe Iran, because Houthis are Iran-backed. Maybe the Qataris, but I do not see the Saudis and the UAE are ineffectual, because any interference from that side is going to be looked at as a hostile intervention into the internal workings of the Houthi-controlled region. The Republic of Yemen, which is internationally recognized, cannot interfere because they are again warring factions. Israel will not be able to help. USA is looked at with hostile eyes. So international actors as such may not play that bigger role that we know of. The only ones that can actually pull this off are Qataris and Qataris maybe, and Iran, because Houthis are Shiites mostly, and Iran is a Shiite nation. So maybe they can, have a little bit of influence on how this goes through. I do believe that the last time Indian was held, was facing charges in a Houthi-controlled region, the Shiite clergy had come forth from the Indian side and interacted with the people on the other side, and the process of diplomacy was much easier and was easily controlled. So maybe now the world has come to a point where they'll have to go to the clergy of Iran and ask for clemency on behalf of these 59 UN staffers.
With that, I would like to thank Ms. Shruti Dasgupta for joining us today and sharing that insight with us on NewsX World. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. According to reports, shells of unknown origin has hit near Syria's Mezzeh military airport in Damascus. 3 shells struck the airport, but no casualties or material damage were reported. Authorities have discovered 4 missile launchers, though the party responsible and the exact launch locations remain unknown. Earlier, residents heard an explosion in the vicinity of Damascus, prompting an official investigation. The incident comes amid ongoing U.S. efforts to mediate between Syria and Israel. Reports in November suggested Washington plans to establish a military presence at a Damascus airbase to support a future security pact, which Damascus has partially denied, calling the report false. The Mezzeh airport lies near areas expected to form a demilitarized zone as part of the proposed Israel-Syria non-aggression agreement. U.S. mediation seeks to de-escalate regional tensions and ensure a framework for security, while Syria and Israel continue discussions over disputed land and future military arrangements. And that's a wrap on Gulf Today. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
in the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on News 6 World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that he will send the United States an updated plan for Ukraine. He has also said that he wants to discuss Ukraine's restoration as part of the peace plan preparations. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that the country could hold elections within 60 to 90 days if the US and Europe provide security guarantees. He has added that Kyiv would move to change the law once those guarantees are secured. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent spoke with Ukraine's Prime Minister discussing expanding the country's ability to purchase American LNG. He has also highlighted US President Donald Trump's commitment to lasting peace in Ukraine. US President Donald Trump has said that consumer prices in the United States are coming down tremendously. He has criticized Democrats, calling their concerns over the cost of living a political hoax. Chinese Defense Ministry cites annual joint strategic patrol with Russia after South Korea has said that aircraft did not violate airspace as two Chinese and 7 Russian jets. He has further stated that China and Russia had carried out their 10th joint strategic patrol in the airspace above the East China Sea and Western Pacific. US has backed Japan and has criticized China for the first time for aiming radars at Japanese military aircraft near Okinawa, escalating tensions following Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's comments involving Taiwan. However, China has accused Japan of disrupting its naval training exercises as both sides present clashing accounts of the incident. Cambodian Information Minister Net Pektra has stated that about 54,550 Cambodian residents have fled their homes for safe shelters, as border conflict with Thailand has entered a third day, while Cambodian Defense Ministry spokesperson has said that 7 Cambodian civilians were killed in the conflict. According to reports, Rwanda-backed M23 rebels have entered the key eastern DRC city of Uvira, prompting security concerns. More than 30,000 people have fled to Burundi as the group calls for a buffer zone. Now for this hour, we start with Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that he plans to send the United States revised proposals in the near future on ending Russia's war with Ukraine, after meeting with European allies to strategize on their next steps. Zelensky has also emphasized that Kyiv wants to discuss the restoration of Ukraine as part of peace plan preparations with the US. Meanwhile, he has also noted that recent Russian strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure show Russia's unwillingness for peace talks. According to him, the United States has told Kyiv that it wants realistic security guarantees for the war-hit country as part of any US-backed peace deal. Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Vasilin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean of Jindal Global Law School, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Professor, what do you think, what alternative or changed proposals has Ukraine sent to US now?
Yes, Ukraine sent its position on the initial plan drafted by United States, and obviously some of the points were unacceptable. Among those, the territorial concessions. It cannot be done. Ukraine cannot concede any territory. It's against its own constitution, but it's also against international law. International law doesn't permit any territorial changes by force. What Russia wants is effectively violation of international law, violation of every principle of the United Nations Charter. This is unacceptable not only for Ukraine, but for every single member of the United Nations, and these are 193 countries in the world, by the way, including Russia and China and everybody else. So obviously this is what the new proposals are, deleting what is unacceptable in Ukraine and what is unacceptable in international law, and continuing the dialogue with reasonable proposals, for example, on the security guarantee for Ukraine, how the arrangements in Europe will develop after the war are very important issues, and these need to be discussed, but only together with Ukraine and together with the European partners. So in other words, any deal between Trump and Putin behind the scene is a no-go, is a non-starter. Well, they are trying to bribe each other. Russians are promising some business deals to Donald Trump, some money to Steve Witkoff, some access to the Arctic Sea, some energy sources in Siberia, and we don't really know why, what exactly. But this looks as a very nasty business deal that Americans and Russians are trying to play behind the back of the Ukrainians. And that's absolutely not acceptable. Ukraine and all the European partners make clear Ukrainian territory is not for bargain. Its security is not for bargain. And simply Donald Trump must understand that he cannot do deals behind the Ukrainians' back. Effectively, what he says is very funny, because Donald Trump wants to pay 0 penny to Ukraine, and he denies any assistance to Ukraine. But on another hand, when it comes to taking part of the cake after the peace, he wants to be first to sit on the table and to grab as many billions as he wants. That doesn't work. That's silly, that's ridiculous. Donald has no power here to influence the decision if he continues the same way as with the 28 points plan.
Great. With that, I would like to thank Professor Veselin Popovsky for joining us today and sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, we stay on this topic. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Ukraine could hold elections within 60 to 90 days if the United States and Europe provide security guarantees. Speaking to reporters, Zelensky has said that he's ready for elections, stressing that guarantees could include weapons, air defense, and sanctions if needed. He has also added that once the guarantees are secured, he would ask Parliament to prepare proposals to change the law and allow voting. Zelensky's remarks mark a shift from his previous stance of holding elections only after the war ends, as martial law currently bans voting. He has said that Ukraine is revising the U.S. peace plan along with 2 documents on security guarantees and reconstruction, which will likely be sent to the U.S. this week. Zelensky has also emphasized on the need for international support to secure a democratic vote. Now, for this discussion, we welcome back Professor Veselin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Professor, for staying with us. Now, why do you think a sudden change of stance on Zelensky's side about, first his stance was that they shouldn't, or Ukraine cannot have any election until the war ends, and now why do you think he has changed his stance? And also, what are the risks that are involved while to hold an election while a country is fighting such a big war?
Yes, during the war it's very difficult to organize elections logistically. If bombs are falling and electricity is cut, what elections can we talk about? And Zelensky is absolutely right. Give us security, stop shelling my cities, get those murderers out of our country, and we will do elections next day. There is no problem with elections. There is no problem with legitimacy of the Ukrainian government and President Zelensky if the war stops tomorrow. Absolutely not. That's the message, very clear. Stop the war, stop shelling my people, stop killing civilians in big cities, and we will do elections immediately. I don't need to worry about my power. That's the message Zelensky makes here, which is exactly the opposite of Putin. Putin wants to stay in power forever. Donald Trump wants to stay in power forever. Ukraine is a democratic country. It doesn't want the same president forever. Ukraine changed 6 times presidents during the term of Vladimir Putin. Ukraine is a democratic country. It doesn't worry about elections, about democracy, about rule of law, because it is a democracy. It is a country ruled by law. And Zelensky may win, he may not run. The future will be there. The Ukrainian people will decide who is the next president. It will not be a dictator grabbing power like Putin and like Trump. It's very simple. Ukraine is a very different story from Russia and from United States for that matter. These are, and when they talk about corruption in Ukraine, wait a minute. How about the corruption in Russia? How about Navalny, who exposed the corruption in Russia and ended up being in prison and poisoned and killed? How about the corruption in the United States? Donald Trump effectively wants to enrich his circle and his family with every deal he makes. Let's talk about corruption in Russia and United States and stop talking about corruption in Ukraine, because the corruption in Ukraine is minimal, 100 times less than what happened in Russia and in United States. And in Ukraine, every single corruption is exposed, transparent, investigated, and all the measures are taken. That's simple.
100%, yes. Thank you for bringing Navalny up in our conversation. Professor, if there is election, who else is the candidate other than Zelensky?
Well, it will be democratic election. There will be other candidates. Somebody like Andriy Yermak, who honorably resigned a few days back, could be a candidate. Somebody like Zaluzhny, who was an excellent Minister of Defense and Foreign Ministers, and he's now an ambassador in London. There are plenty of excellent Ukrainians who defended their country over the last 4 years. Every one of them will be as good as Zelensky. So there is no point to stick to Zelensky here. Zelensky may decide not to run even and remain the hero of the century by defending Ukraine over the last 4 years. He may decide to run and win because his popularity is highest ever because of the strong stand in defense of Ukrainian people and Ukrainian land for the last 4 years. Ukrainians will decide that. We don't really need to worry about it. We don't need really to speculate and ask questions. Ukrainians are freedom-loving people, democracy-loving people. They will elect the next president. It could be Zelensky, it could be Yermak, it could be Zaluzhny, and any of those will do an excellent job for the future of Ukraine.
And going back to our first discussion, some of our guests have seen these ceasefire deals or as business deals indeed. Why do you think so? And you've also mentioned the envoys, making deals with Russia on rather maybe deep sea mining, etc. Why do you think Trump did not send any diplomat? Instead, he sent, his close, personal life's close allies like Steve Witkoff and son-in-law Jared Kushner?
Well, because Trump is the most corrupted president in the history of the United States. He wants money. The answer is very easy here. He wants to make money out of Ukraine, out of the war. He's not interested in any peace. He's not interested in stopping the killing of civilians. All he wants is not to pay a penny to Ukraine now, but to take the biggest share of any agreement afterwards. And that's why he sent the business people and not the diplomat, because he doesn't understand the difference between peace negotiations and business transactions. Trump wants billions out of Russia and out of Ukraine. And that's why he deals with that not as a peacemaker, but as a corrupted president who wants billions out of this for himself and for his family. Let's state it very clear. So how can we expect Donald Trump to deliver peace if he's a corrupted, incompetent, narcissistic criminal? He was convicted already by courts in the United States for committing crimes, and he is not a peacemaker. He wants only to grab as much billions as he can from Russia and Ukraine. That is Donald Trump, and similarly, Vladimir Putin is exactly the same crook who wants billions and nothing else. They think about money. They don't think about stopping killing civilians. That's very clear for everybody in the world. And this is why the Europeans and Ukrainians are trying to protect their interests. They will try to protect the morals and the ethics of international relations and trying to live in a world which is not the rule of the jungle, where the... And see, every statement Trump makes is that strong Ukraine is weak. But that's the rule of the jungle. We are in the 21st century. We have rule of law. We have United Nations. We have international norms. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you very much. With that, I would like to thank Professor Veselin Popovsky for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we stay in the region. Pope Leo has warned that seeking peace in Ukraine without including Europe is unrealistic, speaking after meeting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at Castel Gandolfo. The pontiff has emphasized Europe's unity and its crucial role in security guarantees. The Pope has also criticized aspects of the U.S. peace plan, saying it risks altering the long-standing transatlantic alliance and could undermine cooperation between Europe and the United States in resolving the conflict. Let's listen into what the Pope has shared.
Penso che il ruolo dell'Europa è molto importante e l'unità dei paesi europei è veramente significativo, specialmente in questo caso, no? Cercare un accordo di pace senza includere l'Europa nelle conversazioni, diciamo, non è realista. La guerra è in Europa e penso che le garanzie che si cercano anche di sicurezza oggi e nel futuro, l'Europa deve formare parte. Purtroppo non tutti lo capiscono così, però penso che c'è un'opportunità qui molto grande per i leader di Europa di unirsi e di cercare insieme soluzioni. I'd rather not comment on that. I haven't read the whole thing. I think, unfortunately, some of parts of it that I have seen make a huge change in what was for many, many years a true alliance between Europe and the United States. The remarks that are made about Europe, also in interviews recently, I think are trying to break apart what I think needs to be a very important alliance today and in the future.
Now we move on to our next news. U.S. President Donald Trump has addressed America's affordability concerns at a campaign rally in Mount Pocono, Pennsylvania, saying that the prices have come down tremendously. He has moved to reassure Americans frustrated by high living costs and dismiss Democrats' criticism over inflation as a hoax. The event was a shift from his usual arguments about affordability away from White House briefings and social media posts into a more energetic campaign setting. Let's in fact listen into what Trump has shared.
We're dealing with bad people, and the word affordability is the exact same thing. And I can't say affordability hoax because I agree the prices were too high, so I can't go to hoax because they'll misconstrue that. But they use the word affordability, and that's their only word. They say affordability, and everyone says, oh, that must mean Trump has high prices. No, our prices are coming down tremendously from the highest prices in the history of our...
Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Colin Chong-Yu-Keat. He's a Foreign Affairs Security and Strategy Analyst from University of Malaya, Kuala Lumpur. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, Professor, looking at this, how might Trump's characterization of as hoax this inflation concern, how do you think this will be influencing voter perception? Versus, what do you think MAGA supporters see it as economic reality versus what he says?
Well, inflation is both an economic and a psychological battle. It's not only about statistics, but it's also about consumer confidence and expectations. And Trump's messaging is all about resetting the psychology of inflation to encourage more spending, more investments, to have this wage confidence. So when people believe that prices are stabilizing, which we have seen now, and economic velocity, economic growth, economic development, and activities will improve immediately. So we have seen how price relief is also directly linked to the prices of energy. And under Trump, new administration now in the first year, we have seen how gas prices are coming down. Energy production has been expanded, and this normalization in terms of transport and logistics to reduce pressure on local businesses. Especially in terms of regulatory burdens on producers, we have seen how the Trump administration has also slashed the accesses, of course also to bring back wealth to the country in terms of tariff measures, but also to slash all these regulatory burdens on producers. And energy prices remain the single biggest inflation multiplier across food, transport, manufacturing. And what he has done is that he has reduced gas prices, and this will in fact eventually have these ripple effects in terms of other reduction of prices in terms of groceries and all that. So we have seen how for the past couple of months now, the gas prices in the US is now below $3 per gallon, and this is one of the and this is the lowest since the end of 2021. And this is some of the achievements that I don't see any other presidencies can make in terms of how Trump's policies have been very direct and honest, and and of course also very supportive to the energy sector. And this is one of the reasons why we have seen the inflation is under control now. And of course also he has the pulses of the people, and of course not only MAGA supporters but the American people at large, to know that the sentiments of prices and all that will remain important. And this is how he has also won his presidency in the first place, to also compare the prices under Biden administration, and so how he has managed to control inflation and to bring down prices across the board, including food, and most importantly also on drug prices as well.
Right. And Professor, also, what do you think, what led for Trump to take, by shifting his affordability messaging from his usual settings of online mentioning in his Truth Social to this high energy rally? What do you think changed or motive was behind this rally?
This is to connect the messaging efficacy better to the masses, to the people, and of course markets respond faster to confidence, to rather than to rhetorics. And he knows this well. And what really matters is not just about consumer price index and all that, but also in terms of the real purchasing power of the people, disposable incomes, household cash flow, and these have all been expanded in the first year for this year. And the single biggest factor, as I've mentioned earlier, will be on energy prices, and he has managed to reduce gas prices, and of course also to strengthen, to expand the consumer confidence, business confidence, in terms of reducing burdens on producers, on businesses, to make it easier for businesses to expand, to hire more workers, and of course also to reduce unemployment, to increase wages. And these are all the real-term indicators as to how a local or national economy will perform. And looking at both the micro and macroeconomic indicators, he has managed to stabilize the situation, unlike before, through this measure that he has put in place, not only on tariff measures but also to increase the real life disposable indicators or disposable incomes that people will have, and people feel that in the groceries. So by bringing this messaging effectiveness across the board, and by meeting the people directly, I think he has a very strategic move to ensure that it's not being diluted by all these political narratives out to reduce or to put or to paint him or to paint his actions as ineffective. So I think it's a very good measure for him to tell directly to the people, to his supporters, and to the American people at large that the economy is improving under him. Prices are under control, energy prices are coming down, and it's easier for businesses to expand and to set up new businesses. And of course also it's easier now to have disposable income, higher disposable income and purchasing power. And this is what truly matters to the real American people and to the masses at large.
With that, I would like to thank Professor for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, we stay in the region. A federal judge in New York has ruled that the U.S. Department of Justice can publicly release grand jury materials from Ghislaine Maxwell's sex trafficking investigation. U.S. District Judge Paul Engelmeyer has said that he is ordering the release of material because of a recent law passed by Congress which requires the Justice Department to publish files related to disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein by the end of next week. In his ruling, he has also noted that the court would put in place mechanisms to protect victims from the release of materials that would identify them or otherwise invade their privacy. Maxwell, who is serving a 20-year prison sentence for her role in luring underage girls for Epstein, her former boyfriend, she was moved from a Florida prison to a new minimum security facility in Texas in August, after she was interviewed by Deputy U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche about Epstein. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Professor Collins Chong-Yu Keat. He's a Foreign Affairs Security and Strategy Analyst, joins us live from University of Malaya, Kuala Lumpur. Thank you very much, Professor, for staying with us. Thank you. Looking at this, how might this release of these materials further expose the extent of Maxwell's and Epstein's manipulation of vulnerable minors and the systematic failures that enabled such big crime in U.S.?
Well, this is about, having institutional accountability. It's not just about criminal justice. And of course, also the case was never only about one individual. It touches on the needs also to have this comprehensive review. And of course, it touches on political elites, intelligence networks, financial facilitators, media protection frameworks and all that. So this release, is a test on whether the US system can truly investigate its own power structure within itself. In a context where public trust has been damaged, where years of these sealed documents have fueled further theories, even conspiracy theories, accusations on the protection on the elites, and this erosion of the trust and credibility on the judicial reforms and all that. So transparency is now no longer optional. It's seen to be as essential as ever for greater legitimacy on democratic self-governance and democratic trust. And of course, also this is also about the legality framework, where the potential for new investigations on civil suits and reopenings of cases and all that. Of course, also on reputational damage to anyone named, even without formal charges. So this is a deeply layered and comprehensive framework. And this is why that this of course also he has this international dimension, and this is why it's of great importance for the case to be to be reviewed in totality. And we have seen how Trump has also given his blessings to release the files before, and this expands the trust setting, and to also to put to rest all the previous accusations and theories regarding his involvement, and and eventually he sees the need for greater truth and transparency, and it's a strategic move.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover.